So the first point that was made was that schools only close because of adults. I did kind of talk about this before in my older video that's up on YouTube. Um, it's just very blindsided to what actually goes on at school. Schools cannot function without adults, and that it means adults in multiple different roles. You have to have administrators, you have to have custodial staff, you have to have teachers, paraprofessionals, school nurses, school resource officers, school counselors. Um, there's a lot of adults that come into play, not including things like cafeteria staff that get meals prepared and served. You also have to worry about bus drivers, people who are getting children to school and out of school. For parents who are working, you have after school programs that are picking up kids. So those are more adults that you're introducing into the school system. So there's a lot of adults that you have to take into account when you're looking at how schools operate and function. It's not as simple as just, oh, we have to send the students to school. Um, and a big part of that argument was also that economically, parents aren't getting as much work done at home because they have their kids to be responsible for. And while I am absolutely sure that's true, sending them back isn't necessarily the right answer either. It's putting the priority on the economy and less on the well-being of everybody involved. Because while the teachers have to go back to school and they don't have a choice, the parents can still choose to do their work from home at home. They can work from home, they can work online, they don't have to worry about being in contact with people who could potentially spread this virus. And especially right now, we're seeing cases escalate rather than declining. And that's not really a good thing. And that's because we didn't really follow strict procedures when we first started our lockdown. It was kind of lax. And we still have a lot of people who are not following the mask recommendations. So schools only close because of adults, kind of, but not true. Taking into account the lives of the students requires, in some capacity, taking into account the lives of the adults that work there. So the second point was, there's one that I'm going to come back to at the very end, so I'm going to skip that for now. The second point that was made was inadequate teaching, and this point in particular came from the Harvard Law School. And the argument that was being made there is that parents often use homeschooling as a way to push non-secular curriculum. It's a lot of Christian families, a lot of Christian households that want to homeschool so that they can focus on what they consider an appropriate curriculum. So a lot of the science content that we would deem appropriate is kind of cut out of that curriculum. And you lose a lot of the other academic areas because the focus is put on that religious education and not so much the necessary subjects to move you forward in your schooling. That parents aren't really in the capacity to teach their kids. And online, it just didn't work. And we have studies to show that at this point. That statistically, learning online the way we did it the last few months of the school year didn't really work at all. So to that, I do agree that learning kind of fell behind. I think that when you do traditional virtual school, traditional homeschooling, I don't think you learn to the same degree that you do in the classroom. However, this argument that teachers had to parents had to become the teachers is just totally false. The parents were not expected to become teachers. The teachers were expected to become online teachers overnight. And that's very different. It wasn't like the teachers were just like, all right, hands off, I'm done with this school year, your turn. That's not what happened. The teachers were still behind the scenes working very hard to come up with curriculum, come up with teaching activities, lesson plans, ideas, without actually being able to interact with their students. And that is not an easy task to do. So if you are having that problem where teachers are given a weekend at minimum, a week at max, to get their entire curriculum, everything they've been doing for the past 6 months, now you're trying to move it onto an online platform with no other planning, it's not going to work. You have to take the time to plan out how you're going to implement it, because what you have to do online is not going to look the same as what you do in the classroom. It's got to change in order to be effective. So for that reason, I don't really agree with that point either. Um, but yes, the teaching was definitely inadequate, but it was because we weren't prepared for it. And honestly, I think if counties just go ahead and make the step to say, all right, we're doing distance learning for at least the upcoming fall, then that gives the teachers in the districts and the counties the time to make a plan for, okay, how are we actually going to implement this so that it works, so that students are actually learning, they're actually getting their opportunity to learn, that teachers feel that they're supported in their teaching during this time. How are we going to do that? It definitely takes planning. You can't just jump right into it the day after the decision is made.